Ananasizus, colleagues, Imina 85 na la legislature in Guam is back from recess. At this time, colleagues, I'm going to go ahead and recognize Senator Luis Muñoz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning to you and our colleagues here. Madam Speaker, I move that we reconsider the actions of the body on amended bill number 285-35 COR. The substituted version is in the drive, and I ask the body's indulgence to allow me with the reading of the bill's title.
Senator,
285.
did you do it notwithstanding? You need to do it.
Notwithstanding the House rules, Madam Speaker.
Please proceed.
Madam Speaker, I move that we accept Bill number 285-35 COR as amended and further substituted on the floor is an act to amend subsection 77302A of Article 3, Chapter 77, Title 10, Guam Code annotated, and to add a new subsection 34126 to Article 1, Chapter 34, Title 10, Guam Code, and to add a new subsection 60205 to Article 2, Chapter 60, Title 5, Guam Code, and to repeal and reenact subsection 70.10.3, Article 1, Chapter 70, Title 9, Guam Code annotated as subsection 34127 of Article 1, Chapter 34, Title 10, Guam Code annotated relative to authorizing volunteers to enforce animal abuse laws.
On the motion, are there any objections? We're just going, notwithstanding, to go back to motions, to reconsider the actions of the body.
Madam Speaker, can I ask a question?
State your point of information, Mr. Senator San Agustin.
It's asking to reconsider so we can adopt a substitute.
I'm gonna go ahead and entertain the motion to reconsider first. But that is the reason why she's asking for the reconsideration notwithstanding. Does my colleagues understand that? That's why I allowed her to read it.
But Madam Speaker, all she read was what she's going to change, but didn't explain exactly the impact.
Yeah,
so I can
she's
consider
going
the
to do that,
reconsider.
Senator, as soon as our colleagues accept the motion, if there are no objections. So on the motion to reconsider the actions of the body on Bill 285-35 COR as substituted, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Luis Muñoz, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that we place Bill number 285-35 COR as amended and further substituted on the floor into the third reading file, and I wish to briefly speak on it, if I may, Madam Speaker.
So now I'm going to ask you to say move to accept.
Okay. Madam Speaker, I move to accept Bill number 285-35 COR as amended and further substituted on the floor into the third reading file, and I wish to briefly speak on it.
On the motion to accept, without any objections? So ordered. Senator Muñoz, you're still recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And the substituted version is on the drive, and you will see that there were just...
Senator, before you talk on the bill,
okay.
So you move to accept it. Now you need to move to the third reading to discuss.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 285-35 COR as amended and further substituted on the floor into the third reading file, and I wish to briefly speak on it.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you again for your indulgence, and to our colleagues here this morning. After we recessed session last Thursday, we received a text from Mr. Cyrus Lur from the Guam Animals in Need, also known as GAIN. Mr. Lur informed myself and Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano that GAIN, as a contractor for the Guam Animal Shelter, is presently authorized to impound free-roaming, unleashed, and forfeited animals. We call them strays. The job of the animal shelter is to impound animals. We see free-roaming and unleashed animals every day. Forfeited animals are those whose humans no longer want them. And with the help of Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, her office, Ms. Ricky Orsini, Mr. Lur, and of course the clerk of the legislature and my staff, we've come up with a substitute that restores the volunteer impound language, but limits volunteer impound authority to free-roaming, unleashed, or forfeited animals. Further, the Director of Agriculture will determine how this impound authority will be delegated. Stray animals do not know the difference between a public and private property and often roam in parking lots, in yards, in commercial buildings. They're looking for a meal or a place to rest. We had enacted the prior version, if we had enacted the prior version of this bill, the authority to impound free-roaming, unleashed, or forfeited animals anywhere on Guam would have come to an abrupt stop. And we know that that would have further exacerbated the stray problem that we have now. This substitute bill only restores the impound authority that GAIN already has and gives the same limited authority to the PAWS and CAPE volunteers. I ask my colleagues for their support and here to answer any questions if they have. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Sizua Smasi, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? If Senator Joe San Augustine.
Madam Speaker, I'm just trying to follow the bill and the previous bill that we had sent to the voting file. Now we have authorized the reconsideration. Can you be very specific? What are the difference so I don't have to pull up both bills on my computer? Because if the author of the bill can please go through the bill, what is the difference? Don't explain anything else about where it came from. Just what are the difference so we can move on this?
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. Senator Munoz, would you like to yield?
Yes, Madam Speaker. And so the amendment that struck out the volunteers, the word volunteers in different sections of the bill has been restored. So basically we just added in the volunteers. And then we added in one line, excuse me, let me just find the page. Line 2. Page 2, line 9, which is the, well, we could start with line 7, where it says, the volunteers are also authorized to impound animals subject to subsection 34.127 of Article 1, Chapter 34, Title 10, Guam Code annotated if exigent circumstances are established by plain view. Okay, and then I can continue. On page 3, under subsection 60205, starting with line 19, the director shall determine to the types of circumstances in which volunteers are authorized to impound free-roaming, unleashed, or forfeited animals. On line 24, thank you so much. And on page 3, line 18, the director shall determine the types of circumstances in which the volunteers are authorized to impound free-roaming, unleashed, or forfeited animals. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure if that satisfies the specifics that he's looking for.
Thank you, Senator Munoz. Senator San Augustine.
Madam Speaker, the authors identified what was restored. There's a reason why it was taken out, and that was debated among the body, if it was taken out. And I'm just trying to understand, there's one section that was mentioned, let me see, I'm trying to find that. as we were going along. Page 3, line 19, the director shall determine to the types of circumstances which volunteers are authorized to impound free roaming, unleashed, or forfeit animals. I don't know what is a forfeited animal and unleash. If they're unleashed, they unleash. There's a leash law. You got to tie your dogs. So if it's unleashed, types of circumstances. It seems to be expanding, and it's giving the director a lot of authority. She's not going to be out there. But I want to support the bill, which I stated earlier. Because if I do see a dog chasing a kid out there, and it broke its chain, and I happen to be in my truck, the dog won't last too long if I catch it. And I could care less, because the kid will be more important to me than the dog. Okay? Those are the options I choose. But fine, let's take care of whatever we need to take care of. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. I'll go ahead and
Point of information, Madam Speaker.
say your point of information, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So again, let me just remind the body that a forfeited animal are those whose humans no longer want them. So basically, they would just take the leash off and they'd be free to roam. We just also want to remind, Madam Speaker, the body that GAIN is an animal shelter that impounds animals. If we don't restore this language, they won't be able to do what they're supposed to do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Munoz. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, the author was so yield. It's precisely that I'm having some difficulty understanding the logic. If a certain party is already contracted to do something, does this bill then negate that contract and take that away from them?
Thank you. Senator Munoz, would you like to yield?
No, Madam Speaker, if I'm understanding the question, it doesn't take anything away from them. It actually now gives them authority to put citations, if there are citations. But at this point, I'm not sure what do you mean by negate what they're contracted to do, if she can further explain.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand, Madam Speaker. I believe I heard that by putting this amendment in, it now takes away the authority that GAIN has by contract to pick up strays. So my question is, if there's a separate contract for a certain service, how does this bill apply to that? I'm not seeing the two. If that's the logic behind having to restore it, do you see what I mean, Madam Speaker? It was said that if you put this language in, it takes that away from them. But I'm asking if it's a separate contract for services apart from anything, a standalone contract, why would this bill affect that contract?
Thank you. Senator Munoz, would you like to yield?
Yeah, I believe I understand what she's talking about. And I know that initially when this amendment was introduced by another senator, the purpose for her doing that was out of concern for the safety of the volunteers. So what we did was we incorporated language to allow the Department of Agriculture to still oversee and guide the volunteers so that they remain safe. If we took the language out as far as the volunteers, then that would, as I understand it from the director of GAIN, that it would take away their authority to even impound freestanding, let me get those words again, free roaming, unleashed, or forfeited animals. So I'm just guided by his expertise. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Munoz. Senator Torres, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The point that I'm trying to make is that this bill doesn't grant any new authority to GAIN that it doesn't already have by contract, and that was my point. So it doesn't matter. I don't believe that the question has been adequately answered or can be adequately answered by by the authors. So I'll just end it at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Torres. Anyone else? Senator Taitzino.
Sujuis Masi, Maskahalu. I support the amendments that are placed in here. My sole concern really in offering the amendments previously that had taken away the impounding was because an example had been given in the public hearing about an animal being cruelly tied up to a tree. And so my concern was the pets and safety of taking pets from owners. And so in that language, I did not realize that it would also be affecting their ability to collect strays that do wander onto private property. And so this amendment allows the situation I was concerned about people going onto private property and perhaps impounding pets that are contained and leashed, and therefore perhaps getting into unsafe situations with owners, but restores the part where they can chase a stray onto a Kmart parking lot or some other private property as they're trying to collect the stray animals. So I do support the need to be able to have that authority and not have it be a gray area in any fashion, that for free roaming, unleashed, and forfeited animals, that they be able to carry that out. So I hope that also provides a little clarity between what my goal was in the beginning and the goal in supporting this distinction now. Sujuis Masi.
Thank you, Senator Taitzino. Anyone else wishing to speak this morning? If not, Senator Muñoz, you may close.
Thank you again. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I just want the colleagues to understand that the impound, like what the previous speaker said, she's just concerned about the impounding of strays or animals in private property and in people's homes. Now, the strays also roam everywhere. We can see them on the sides of the streets, in parking lots, and as I understand it from Gain, that this language, striking out the volunteers language, will prevent them from doing that. Whatever the contract is that they signed, this law will precede that. So we just want to protect them and reduce the stray population that we have currently and not make it worse. Madam Speaker, I just ask for my colleagues' support, and also would like to, if I can, add Senator Kelly Marsh Taitzino as a co-sponsor to this.
Thank you, Senator Muñoz. On the motion to place Senator Marsh Taitzino onto the sponsorship. Yes.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Are we
Please.
still discussing the previous motion?
Yeah,
Her amendment? Her previous amendment?
Yeah,
So we have to
yes.
dispose of that prior to...
no, there was a substituted version and it was accepted and then we discussed. So it's like entertaining the bill. So there was no need for
Understood. I thought it was a separate amendment. I didn't realize it was substituted. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion, without any objection, seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Muñoz to place, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I move to place Bill number 285-35 COR into the voting file.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Jesus Masi, Senator. Next, colleagues, we have Bill 185-35 COR. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Suzu's Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill 185-35 COR at the bottom of the agenda.
On that motion, without any objection, seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Bill 197-35 LS, Senator, Legislative Secretary, you are recognized.
Thank you
Good
very
morning.
much, Madam Speaker. Good morning to you and to our colleagues. I've sent in a substitute version of Bill 197 to the clerks, and I'd like to give them a few minutes to upload it. So if you can come back to me after lunch, I don't need to set to the bottom, but maybe
Set
the
aside.
next person in line can move forward, and I'll be after lunch.
On that motion, just to set aside in place, without any objections. Motion carries. Senator Therese, I will recognize you at this time. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Speaker and colleagues. I move to accept Bill number 419-35 COR as substituted by the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land and Justice, and further substituted on the floor. The bill introduced by myself, and it's titled, An Act to Add a New Chapter 75A and to Amend 75109A of Chapter 75, both of Title 21, Guam Code Annotated, relative to preserving the land restoration and justice mission of the Chamorro Land Trust. So the markup version was also given to the clerks, so these are pretty much technical changes that we're recommending.
Thank you. Motion to accept. Without any objections, seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Therese, you are still recognized.
Thank you, Speaker and colleagues. And so I move to place Bill number 419-35 COR as substituted by the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land and Justice, and further substituted on the floor into the third reading file, and I would like to speak on the bill.
Please proceed, Senator Talahi.
Thank you. So Bill number 419-35 is intended to defend the history and purpose of the Chamorro Land Trust Act, which was created in 1975 by Public Law 12-226 and enacted as Chapter 75 of Title 21 Guam Code Annotated. The late Senator Paul Bordallo was the author of the Chamorro Land Trust Act. He had the vision and fortitude and political will to get this passed 45 years ago, and it was passed unanimously by the 12th Guam Legislature. The Chamorro Land Trust Act was established as a land restoration program meant to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands by the United States federal government between 1898 and 1968, and to provide residential and agricultural land for those persons eligible in the form of Chamorro Land Trust Commission leases. The changes to the Chamorro Land Trust Act proposed in Bill number 419-35 are intended to more clearly demonstrate that the Act and the program is a land restoration program. It would expand the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who owned or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied or used the lands that were taken. Bill number 419 creates a new Chapter 75A in Title 21 of the Guam Code Annotated that will be codified and renumbered by the compiler to mirror the current Chamorro Land Trust Act in Chapter 75 of the same title, with specific changes outlined in Section 1 of the bill and shall be effective January 1, 2021. The bill seeks to keep Chapter 75 of Title 21 intact for historical purposes and for those who applied or were approved for leases prior to January 1, 2021. And that Chapter 75 will continue to govern. Some of the other changes that are proposed to the law in this bill are that all references to Chamorro and native Chamorro, or any variations thereof, will be changed to beneficiary and eligible beneficiary, respectively. References to Chamorro homelands shall be replaced with Chamorro Land Trust property, except as provided in 2 sections of the new chapter. The term Chamorro Land Trust property means all available lands, which includes Chamorro homelands under the control of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission under the provisions of the law. An eligible beneficiary of the land trust will now mean any person regardless of race, color, or national origin, one whose land was acquired by the United States government between 1898 and 1968, or descendants of such person, or two, who either occupied, farmed, or ranched land for residential or agricultural purposes for at least 1 year immediately prior to that land being acquired by the United States government between 1898 and 1968, or descendants of such person. except that if a person occupied, farmed, or ranched the land on or after December 8, 1941, and the land was acquired at any time after that date and up to 1950, the one-year tenure need not have occurred immediately prior to acquisition by the United States government. A lessee will now be able to designate property after their death to the lessee's spouse, or someone who the lessee has been married to for at least 7 years, or to someone who was residing on the property with the lessee in a structure that has been approved as a residence at the time of the lessee's death, or someone who is not an eligible beneficiary as defined under this statute upon the death of the lessee shall receive a life estate in the remainder of the lease, and upon termination of the life estate, assignment of the lessee's remaining interest in the lease shall be governed by the applicable provisions of the Chamorro Land Trust Act as if the lessee had died without designating his or her spouse as a beneficiary. Finally, Bill 419-35 would approve the settlement in the case and would clarify that the amendments to the Chamorro Land Trust Law were made pursuant, or that are made pursuant to this act are to strengthen the land trust and in furtherance of the settlement, and provided that the settlement shall not absolve or relieve the United States of any liability for land takings or waive the historic demand of the people of Guam for return or restoration of the land, and provided further that the settlement shall include dismissal of allegations against the government of Guam and preclude further challenge of the Chamorro Land Trust Law by the same parties on the same grounds, and preclude constitutional challenge of the provisions of the Chamorro Land Trust Law as amended or added by this act. For the record, the fiscal note waiver we received from BBMR says that the bill is administrative in nature and poses no fiscal impact to any funds of the government of Guam. During the 2 public hearings on the bill, we received testimony in support of the bill from the Chamorro Land Trust Commissioner and current Chairman John Regis Jr., from Commissioner Arlene Berdalio, from former CLTC Commissioner and former Chairperson Pika Farron, from CLTC Administrative Director Jack Hattick, from Deputy Attorney General Jamie Canto on behalf of the Office of the Attorney General, from Attorney Mike Phillips, who was an attorney for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and from Ronald Laguana, who's a member of the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission. Both attorneys who represent the government in the litigation confirmed that all settlement requirements were addressed in the bill. And I worked closely with the compiler of laws to ensure the directives in the bill were clear and understandable, and that she will be able to implement those. And of course, our legal bureau was very helpful in ensuring that the bill was consistent throughout and consistent with the other legal requirements, and so I thank them for their work. Bill number 419-35 is meant to move the CLTC mission and program forward and protect it for future generations so that those whose land was unjustly taken can turn land trust properties into thriving residences, agriculture, and cottage industries. I look forward to further discussion from my colleagues and ask them to consider passage of this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Therese, on the main motion, anyone wishing to speak? Senator Castro, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in support of the measure. How we arrived at this point is a matter for generations now and generations to come to address, to redress. But now that we're here, Madam Speaker, I believe that the bill as submitted is sufficient. It's sufficient to meet a standard, a set of laws that we are joined to. And I stand in support of this bill so that we as a great Chamorro nation can hold on to what semblance remains of our attempts to preserve our indigeneity. I can't say that I'm pleased that whenever we assert ourselves as an indigenous people, that we're met with resistance. Depending on what corner you turn or what path we lay for ourselves forward, that somehow there are some who can't help but cover such actions, bold and noble steps forward, to cover it with intonations of racism or somehow being separatists. But I am pleased, I will say for the record, I am pleased that my colleague, notwithstanding these challenges, was able to work with subject matter experts and others with the legal mind and the legal framework to have come to terms with however it is forward we can move to preserve our indigeneity. I will commend the author for being capable, committed, and unwavering as a champion of the law and of our Chamorro people. So I stand with you, Senator Talahi, and make no mistake about it, I stand with this great Chamorro nation. I'd like to reserve the balance of my time.
Senator Castro. Minority Leader, you are recognized.
Sijus Mase, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on this very, very historical bill. And you remember in 2019, we had a public hearing, informational hearing, where we had several attorneys present from the Attorney General's office, Canto. Michael Phillips was also present, as well as Pika Farron. And I think there was another board member there to talk about, you know, where we are today and the formulation of the decision by the negotiations of this team, which was, if this was basketball, it'd be called the Dream Team. They were a great group of individuals. The wealth of knowledge that Michael Phillips brought to the table. And I believe there was another attorney, and the good author could mention his name right now, who was at the very beginning of this. It was attorney
Ken Orcutt.
Yes, was very much a part of this, but didn't get to see it to the end. However, Jamie Cantu came in, carried the torch through. But I think it was a lot of the hard work, excellent work, and consistency and push by the former chairman of the Chamorro Land Trust, Pika Farron. It was disheartening to hear that she was no longer made to stay on the Chamorro Land Trust. I guess her term had let up, but it would have been excellent if she would have stayed for all the work that she has done in the years that she'd served and what she can do for the future. Hopefully she will be back. But nonetheless, she showed up during the public hearing to testify in favor of this bill. And I just wanted to commend all the hard work that they put together with the dream team, I call the dream team. And when it was asked, is everything that was put on this agreement beneficial for us? And they all believed it was very beneficial. But there was one thing that was said that really touched me during this whole process. It was mentioned by Attorney Canto. And he said that that there was something that the good author of this legislation had mentioned through another attorney that kept him going and kept the course and keeping in mind the importance of this legislation and what it really meant. And he said that he kept keeping in his mind a comment that was made by the author saying that the Chamorros, the feds didn't take land because they were Chamorro. It's because they had their land taken away. And it was a reflection, not of race, but of injustice. And if we all think about that for a moment, we understand the importance of this legislation to make whole. And I thank the author for instilling that in the minds of this dream team. It was about the injustice. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Minority Leader. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator Marsh Taitsino, you're recognized.
Sainama Asi Maska Halu. I stand in support of this legislation. I was very wary of it at the beginning, and I was extremely concerned that it would be changing things not for the better. I attended all the public hearings, both last year and this year, to get as much information from those that were a part of this proceedings as possible. And it was very, very important to me to hear from them and to hear that they assessed this to be an improvement, as was mentioned by previous speakers, an improvement to the act to better meet the intent of it being for land restoration. And further, it takes into consideration familial ties to continue to allow those to reside on the land. It resolves the Department of Justice's concerns, and those were indeed concerns to our community. And perhaps the best news is that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission itself said that once this bill is into place and becomes law, that they can move aggressively forward. And that is what we've been waiting for all along, is aggressive movement forward to carry out addressing these injustices. So I commend all those who've been involved. It's taken a lot of hard work. It's taken a lot of perseverance. It's taken a lot of commitment. And I am truly grateful for that, and I'm truly grateful to be able to be here and very proudly vote to support this bill and help make it law. Situas Masi.
Juan Pabetso, Senator Tadino. On the main motion, if no one else, Senator Therese, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, colleagues, for your statements on the bill and support. I am humbled and grateful for the many great leaders like the late Senator Paul Berdalio, Senator Dick Titano, Senator Eddie Regis, Senator Angel Santos, Ed Beneventi, so many who fought tirelessly to preserve the Chamorro Land Trust program for us, who never stopped protecting and expanding the potential of this land and the precious resources. This bill recognizes the land use history of the people of Guam and will expand residential and agricultural leases to those individuals and their descendants whose use of land on Guam was disrupted due to land takings. I'd also like to thank the former chairperson of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, Pika Farron, who was involved in these negotiations every step of the way. Former Deputy Attorney Ken Orcutt from the Attorney General's Office, Attorney Mike Phillips, Deputy Attorney James Canto, CLTC Director Jack Hattick, former Attorney General Elizabeth Barrett Anderson, and Attorney General Levin Camacho for the countless hours and months spent defending the CLT Act in the lawsuit brought on by the U.S. Department of Justice. They worked extremely hard and represented the best interest for the people of Guam. Not only did they preserve these rights for us, but they also expanded the CLTC program with the settlement agreement. I'm honored to be part of ensuring the history of the Chamorro Land Trust Act and its original intent to provide justice to those whose land was taken. As I said at the hearings on these bills, we have seen firsthand the impact of the massive land takings on Guam's families. Too many of our families live in poverty, and decades later, without stable place to live, and their ability to use the land to provide for their families is severely disrupted. And it took years of vision, courage, advocacy, protests, and even lawsuits to get where we are today. And in honor of those who preserve these rights, we must never stop fighting for protecting and expanding the potential of this land and its precious resources to nurture and sustain future generations. It's our duty as lawmakers to safeguard the land restoration mission of the trust, to protect the trust from being raided by special interests, to manage the trust better and to make it more conducive to thriving residences, agriculture, and cottage industries, and to carry these homeland programs into perpetuity for future generations as intended, so that we may truly remedy the long-term injustice of these massive land takings. I move to place Bill number 419-35 as substituted by the committee and further substituted on the floor into the third reading file.
On that motion, Senator, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none. Motion carries. Senator Therese Terlahi, you are also recognized on Bill 408-35 COR.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill number 408-35 COR as amended by the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land, and Justice. An act to amend 4401C of Article 4 of Chapter 4, Title 7, Guam Code Annotated, and to amend Section 40.50A of Chapter 440 of Title 8, Guam Code Annotated, relative to expanding the powers of the Superior Court of Guam magistrates, to include the authority to preside over additional non-dispositive hearings and to modify bail conditions, into the third reading file, and would like to speak on the bill.
Senator Therese, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I introduced Bill number 408-35 and several other bills in an effort to assist the judiciary in alleviating its backlog of cases as a result of the pandemic. The bills were introduced with the exact same language as proposed by the Judicial Council and the Chief Justice. In the Chief Justice's September 23rd letter, he wrote, quote, "As you are aware, since March 2020, in response to the COVID-19 global pandemic, Imagahagan Guahan has declared Guam to be in a state of public health emergency. Since then, Imagahaga has issued a series of executive orders that have suspended non-essential government operations for the better part of the past 6 months. In parity with these executive orders and in recognition of the need to stem the spread of the virus, the Supreme Court of Guam has issued a series of administrative orders that have suspended non-essential court operations, including civil and criminal jury trials and grand jury proceedings for all but a few weeks in the last 6 months." Unquote. The Judicial Council passed resolution number JC 20-026 relative to approving proposed legislation on the conduct of judicial proceedings for submission to the Guam Legislature on August 20th, and included draft language that was used for Bill number 408-35 COR. So Bill 408 will permanently amend the statute to expand the powers of the magistrates to allow them to perform additional duties such as hearing and disposing of pretrial matters, status hearings, issuing search warrants and warrants of arrest, performing marriages, and hearing bail redetermination motions, modifying bail and bail conditions, and taking grand jury returns. All of these duties were previously reserved for judges only. During the public hearing for Bill number 408-35, the Office of the Attorney General, the Public Defender Service Corporation, the alternate public defender, and private law firm Areola had no objections with Bill number 408-35 and expressed support. BBMR's fiscal note stated that they anticipate the bill will not affect the revenues or the expenditures of the judiciary, and it is thus administrative in nature and poses no fiscal impact to any funds of the government of Guam. We did incorporate some technical amendments made by the legal counsel to the introduced bill. During the public hearing, I was really the only one who raised a concern on the bill, and that was that, we had heard over the past few years of, release of those accused of crime or those who had been convicted of crime, and then reoffense by those same persons, and I wanted to ensure that giving these duties to release and set bail conditions to magistrates would not further exacerbate those problems in the community. And that I was assured, of course, at the hearing by court administrator that, they must rely on the prosecution and the defense sides to both argue whether the community will be safe, which is the criteria for release, and whether, there is anything that poses a risk. So again, we are entrusting these duties to the magistrates pursuant to this bill, and we do hope that they will take very seriously this duty to consider carefully risk to the community and risk of reoffense before release. With that, Madam Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this bill to assist the judiciary. Si Dios mas.
Buen provecho, Senator Therese. On the main motion, Senator Joseph Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the author, I'm in support of the bill. But I'm just curious that because the magistrate has always conducted himself like a judge, I'm just surprised that we're just not adding another judge and just make the magistrate be a judge himself and be used only, and then maybe the judges can rotate among themselves so that we don't have to worry about this, because I'm just very curious. And maybe the author can maybe consider that in the future, or even on this bill, make the magistrate be a judge. That's just an option I just wanted, but I'm in support of the bill. The magistrate gets additional authority, is able to exercise, speed up the process. Great route to go. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And maybe the author can answer that, maybe consider that.
Senator Therese, would you like to answer that?
I think it's a common, way that courts are set up across the nation, and even the district court, where they have a magistrate, judges to do parts of the cases that are, preliminary, that require, constant and quick action, while the judges are, only because sometimes the judges are caught in these prolonged hearings. For example, they talked a lot at the hearing about jury trials and how we are going to be going forward with jury trials in when the pandemic is still, alive and active. So it's going to just take a lot more time. They're going to spread out their courtrooms, and so this is they're really for different parts of the justice system. And I guess that's, I'm just going to say, I support this setup. That we also have referees at the court, and we have, and they've expanded, use of the referees in matters as well. And that, but it's just an additional process to assist with the judges. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Joe, does that help?
Yes, it does, Madam Speaker. But the only reason why I brought this up is because the same person that's appointed as the magistrate has the same qualification as the judges that are finally appointed or nominated to be judges. And it was only like being called a junior judge, you're the magistrate for the month or for the year. That's the only reason why, it's just to expand it. So in the event they needed additional help in the courts, they've got another judge. Thank you. But I still support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Joe. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator Therese, would you like to close?
No, thank you, Your Honor. Just to move that this be placed on third reading for vote.
On the voting file, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have Bill 219-35. 219-35 COR, Senator Joseph August. I'm sorry, I do apologize. I'm looking it over. Colleagues, item number 21, bill number 420-35 LS, as introduced by Senator Mary Torres and Speaker Tina Muñoz. Senator Mary, you are recognized.
Si Dios mas, Madam Speaker, I move to place bill number 420-35 LS, introduced by myself, and co-sponsored by Speaker Tina Munya Barnes, which is an act to amend Section 5 in Chapter 11 of Public Law 3599 and to appropriate the sum of $470,000 to the Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services relative to funding the operations of the Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services in fiscal year 2021, which may include, but not be limited to, the Bureau of Emerging Infectious Diseases, into the third reading file, and if I may speak on the measure.
Senator Mary Torres, you may proceed.
Madam Speaker, this measure was introduced to aid our public health department in the middle of this pandemic. As we know, the Department of Public Health and Social Services endured significant cuts in the last fiscal year budget due to reduced government revenues. It's no secret that while the Department of Public Health has been working tirelessly to improve COVID-19 contact tracing efforts, the agency remains significantly underfunded and overwhelmed, and has repeatedly indicated at multiple oversight hearings conducted by the Committee on Health. This situation has led to a backlog in COVID-19 case investigations at the time of introduction. To help address this issue, Bill 420 appropriates $470,000 for public health's operations in fiscal year 2021, which may include the newly created Bureau of Emerging Infectious Diseases. As Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Suzanne Kaneshiro noted at the public hearing on this bill, the Guam Public Health Laboratory provides critical diagnostic laboratory testing for COVID-19 with the ability to identify positive cases within hours of testing. While the funds in this bill may be used for the laboratory, I want to underscore this bill does not require it. A plain reading of the language clearly shows that the Department of Public Health and Social Services may use this money for more urgent operations as the Department of Public Health and Social Services deems necessary. I want to add that the appropriations comes from funds that are remaining following the government of Guam's full payment of the cost of living allowance this year. While the legislature had appropriated $14,898,000 for COLA payments in fiscal year 2021, the Government of Guam Retirement Fund Director Paula Blas indicated that only $14,428,000 was expended to cover all the retirees and the COLA needs, which left a balance of nearly $500,000 remaining in the general fund appropriation. A copy of that clear breakdown was provided to yourself, Madam Speaker, and the Retirement Oversight Chair, yourself, and this breakdown has also been uploaded to the session drive for my colleagues' review. Given that COLA has been fully paid and we have been assured by the Gov Guam Retirement Fund that additional needs have all been covered, I respectfully ask my colleagues to make good on our commitment to make public health whole. We have fought very diligently in the budget hearing to find every dollar that we can to give to public health during this pandemic and this health emergency. And I humbly ask that you continue to join me in this effort, which is one step closer to making them whole and ensuring that they have additional monies for the fiscal year 2021 for operations or critical needs. Si Diyos maasi.
Thank you, Senator Mary Torres. Senator Joseph Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Not that it's something I want to ask for, but because it's an appropriation, and even though it can be answered real quick, we would, and we should go into the committee of the whole. I've already contacted the Office of Finance and Budget. They are calling the retirement fund, and they'll be contacting the administration. So they can answer how we got up to, like one of my colleagues in the past mentioned, there's 233 GovGuam folks that could have retired. That's what it equates to. And we'll be able to get that answer, and it should be quick. I just asked my colleagues, when we do go to committee of the whole, we would be only talking about this one bill, nothing more. Thank you.
So is that a motion for the committee of the whole, Senator?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Committee of the
you
whole,
move it?
but we would do it at 2 o'clock so that everybody else can be contacted.
Madam Speaker, may I
Yes.
just ask for clarification? Are we going to inquire from the GovGuam Retirement Fund answers or further clarification of answers that she provided in writing that is in the committee report? I mean, I'm just trying to narrow it down to what exactly we are going to be querying.
Thank you for your point of information, Senator Torres. But there is a motion on the floor. Senator San Augustine, can you please restate your motion for the record?
Madam Speaker, my motion is that we proceed to committee of the whole, and I understand where the author is coming from. I'm in agreement with that, but that's the same answer is going to come out anyway. The same thing they provided, it'll be given this afternoon.
So can you please state the motion to move into,
A motion is to move to committee of the whole, and at 2 o'clock, so we can contact everybody that can make it here.
on that motion, is there an objection?
No objections.
Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. We are in till 2 this afternoon.